The stack of urgent shipping manifests hit the floor before I could react. My brother Marcus had snatched them from my hands and tossed them like junk mail. The papers scattered across our father's office. The same office where William Hartley had built a $600 million logistics empire over 40 years. My father had been dead for 4 hours. The coroner's van hadn't even left the driveway yet, and Marcus was already running his finger along our father's hand-built oak desk. "This has to go," he announced. "Too rustic. I want glass, chrome, something that says visionary." My fingers went numb. I watched those manifests, urgent shipments, worried drivers, a supply chain I'd held together with my bare hands, lying crumpled on the carpet like they meant nothing. My name is Rachel. I'm 34, and I've spent the last decade being the invisible engine of my family's company. This is the story of how I let my brother bury himself, and then handed him the shovel. Victoryâ, my sister-in-law, swept in behind Marcus, phone already pressed to her ear. "We need to gut this entire floor," she called out to whoever was listening. "It smells like old men and diesel fuel. I'm thinking a private lounge, wet bar, maybe a helipad on the roof. Marcus deserves an entrance." George stood up from his chair. He'd been my father's chief of staff for 40 years, taught Marcus how to tie his shoes, taught me how to read a balance sheet. His face was gray with grief, but he tried anyway. "We have a liquidity crisis," George said carefully. "The drivers are worried about their pensions. We need to stabilize." Marcus laughed. Actually laughed. "Relax, George. You're barely going to be here anyway." He adjusted a tie that cost more than my monthly rent. "We need fresh blood, young energy. Consider this your notice." Then Marcus turned to me. His eyes swept over me like I was part of the furniture. "And you, Rachel," the sneer in his voice could curdle milk, "we need a real face for this company, someone with charisma. You can stay on to handle the filing, maybe the coffee orders. You're good at the boring stuff." He leaned closer. "Just keep the lights on while I spend the profits." I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. I bent down and picked up every single manifest from the floor, organizing them into a neat stack while Marcus and Victoryâ talked about liquidating the trucking fleet to buy a villa in Tuscany. But here's what my brother never understood about me. My silence was never submission. It was surveillance. For 10 years, I had been the ghost in the machine. While Marcus networked in Ibiza and built his personal brand at Formula One races, I was standing in ankle-deep slush at distribution centers outside Detroit, negotiating with union leaders at 3 a.m. to keep the supply chain moving. I missed my best friend's wedding because a shipment of medical supplies was stuck in customs in Rotterdam. I spent my 25th birthday in a server room rebooting the tracking system after a cyber attack. I audited the fuel costs, streamlined the shipping routes, saved the company $12 million in operational waste in a single fiscal year. I had lived frugally for a decade. No car, no vacations, every bonus reinvested. While my brother spent millions on Flash. The contrast between us wasn't just professional, it was financial. Every dollar he wasted, I saved. I told myself competence was currency. I told myself merit would eventually outweigh bloodline. But watching my brother plan his Italian vacation over my father's still warm body, I finally understood the truth. I hadn't been paying my dues. I had been giving them permission to erase me. Every missed holiday, every stolen idea, every time Marcus took credit for a deal I closed, I had logged it all. I wasn't just working. I was accumulating evidence. And my father, he had been keeping score, too. I remembered the conversation we'd had 3 weeks before he died, when the doctors had just delivered the final prognosis. My father called me into his office alone. He was weak, but his eyes were still sharp. "Your brother thinks I've been blind," he said, sliding a thick folder across the desk. "He thinks I spoiled him because I loved him. But I didn't spoil him, Rachel. I was running a feasibility study on his character." I opened the folder. Inside was 10 years of documentation, every failed nightclub, every bankruptcy, every loan Marcus had signed without reading the fine print. "Those weren't gifts," my father continued. "They were loans against his inheritance. And according to my math, he's already spent every dime he was ever going to get." He tapped a specific page, a promissory note from 5 years ago. Marcus had needed bail money for an incident in Monaco, fast and quiet. He'd signed an equity transfer agreement without reading past the first paragraph. If his debt exceeds $6 million, my father explained, he forfeits all voting rights and inheritance claims. The equity transfers to whoever satisfies the outstanding debt. I stared at the document. His debt is at $6.2 million. I know, my father smiled, cold, terrifying. That's why I need you to write a check. He handed me a sealed envelope. Give this to George after I'm gone. He'll know what to do at the service. I used my own savings, my performance bonuses, my investment portfolio that I'd built while Marcus bought sports cars, $6.2 million to clear my brother's debt from the company books. I didn't inherit this empire. I bought it. That was the last private conversation I ever had with my father. The funeral was 3 days later. Massive cathedral in Chicago, packed with the elite of the logistics world. Marcus and Victoria treated it like the Met Gala, shaking hands with board members, accepting condolences for a position that was never going to be his. Victoria grabbed the microphone before the priest could finish the final prayer. Her voice was sharp, confident. I'm thrilled to announce that Marcus Hartley is officially the new CEO of Hartley Logistics. She beamed. She looked around for applause. That's when the speakers crackled. A sound echoed through the cathedral, a loud, distinct, dry chuckle coming from the direction of my father's coffin. It wasn't a ghost. It was a recording. George had locked the heavy oak doors. The projector screen behind the altar flickered to life, and there was my father, sitting at his desk, staring into the camera with the eyes of a man who had stared down union strikes and supply chain collapses for 40 years. Marcus, my father's voice boomed through the church. You've spent the last 10 years waiting for this moment, waiting for me to die so you could stop asking permission and start spending the principal. The video feed shrank. A massive spreadsheet appeared, rows color-coded in red, a ledger of every failure, every bankruptcy, every wasted dollar. Let's review the portfolio. Item 1, the nightclub in Miami. Cost, $2.4 million. Status, bankrupt in 6 months. Item 2, the vintage car restoration business. Cost, $1.8 million. Status, liquidated for scrap. Item 3, your personal branding consultants. Cost, $400,000 a year. Victoria had stopped admiring the architecture. Her mouth hung open as the numbers scrolled past, a public audit of their entire lifestyle. You failed the test, Marcus. My father's face filled the screen again. You burned it all, but here's what you forgot. I'm a businessman. I don't give away capital without paperwork. The promissory note appeared on screen, Marcus's arrogant signature in blue ink at the bottom. Those weren't gifts, son. They were loans. And according to my math, you've already spent every dime of your inheritance. My father paused. But someone stepped in. Someone wrote a check for $6.2 million to clear your debt from the books. The bank transfer appeared. The amount, the sender, Rachel Hartley. You didn't inherit this company, Marcus. You sold it, piece by piece, drink by drink, mistake by mistake. And your sister bought it. I watched the color drain from my brother's face. Rachel, my father said, looking at the camera with a warmth I hadn't seen in years. The keys are in the safe. Fire him. The screen went black. Victoria turned to Marcus. The adoration in her eyes evaporated instantly, replaced by disgust. She shoved him. You lied to me. You told me the money was yours. Marcus scrambled toward me, face pale, hands shaking. Rachel, this is a joke, right? Dad was sick. He wasn't thinking straight. We're family. You can't fire family. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw it clearly for the first time. Without the wallet to prop him up, there was no person left. His power had never been real. It was rented, a subscription service paid for by our father's money. And the subscription had just expired. I reached into my purse and pulled out a thick envelope. This isn't a joke, Marcus. My voice was steady. This is a termination notice, effective immediately. George has deactivated your key cards and revoked your access to all company accounts. He stared at the envelope like it was a bomb. Inside, I continued, is a repayment schedule for the remaining $200,000 you still owe the estate. I expect the first payment on the 1st of the month. Don't be late. He tried to speak. No words came out. He just stood there, a king without a kingdom. While the board members behind us began checking their watches, ready to get back to work. Walking out of that cathedral felt different. The air was cleaner. The sun was brighter. George was waiting by the car, back door already open. For 20 years, he'd held that door for my father. Today, he held it for me. We drove past the main distribution warehouse. I looked up at the massive sign, the trucks lining up at the bays, the sheer scale of the operation. For a decade, I had felt the crushing weight of duty. Today, I felt the grounding weight of ownership. It wasn't a burden anymore. It was mine. I had bought it with sleepless nights and missed holidays, and I had the receipt to prove it. My phone buzzed. Notification. Victoryâ had filed for divorce. I swiped it away. A call from Marcus. I blocked the number. I didn't feel guilty. I felt efficient. I had cut the dead weight from the supply chain. 6 months later, Marcus defaulted on his first payment. I let the lawyers handle the collection. Some debts, like some people, aren't worth chasing yourself. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in years, knowing the empire was finally safe in the hands of the one person who knew how to carry it. If you believe that leadership is earned, not inherited, hit that like button and share this story. Tell me in the comments, would you have forgiven the debt, or did Marcus get exactly what he deserved? Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.